Hey everybody, sorry I can't join you live for the podcast this week, but as you can see, we're in the process of moving. This is all of our stuff being loaded into the truck, and just a few minutes ago I was looking at all of our artwork piled up against the wall. I didn't know what my assistant Christy had curated for this week's podcast till I just now listened to it, and the coincidence is amazing. She chose a quote from Rumi that's one of my favorites, and I just was snagged by that quote on a piece of our artwork as I took it off of the wall, and I read it and I thought, man, I remember this great experience I had when Wayne Dyer came to me and brought me this, and that's what's in this week's podcast. So the web is always showing up, and I hope it shows up beautifully in your lives as well. This episode starts with some great evidence from across the veil, tells a great story about Wayne Dyer and a teaching for all of us about who we really are. And then it wraps up again at the end with a closing to the story I started at the beginning. So stay with us to the end, and I know you'll learn a lot from this one. Meanwhile, I'll see you back here next week. For those of you who are new, I always start by sharing some of the latest evidence from the spirit world, my interactions with spirit in the last month, and then lessons learned from guides. So I didn't do any readings for about 3 weeks because of the Mediterranean cruise and recovering afterwards, big energy drain, and brought some kind of crud back with me. So when I did get back into it, it's kind of like, oh, got to get back in the saddle, but there's no need to worry. Once you've made that connection with spirit and your energy just keeps building, it is like riding a bicycle. It really does just keep getting better and better. So don't any of you worry if you take time off, but it is so important to keep doing readings. It keeps the trust strong. Trust being what I've found to be the biggest challenge for all of us, to just trust that spirit is going to give you exactly what everybody needs the most. But I did get a little nervous. Valerie is now my scheduling princess now that Lynette has retired. And she put in the notes in my calendar. I don't want to know much about people, but she said, your client speaks Gujarati and would like her son to be there to translate. I said, oh my God, I don't even know what Gujarati is. I normally won't look up anything about a client, but I figure I got to know what this is, being a language major. So I just searched who speaks Gujarati, and it's a province or an area in India. I said, okay, she could be in India. I don't know where she was. And immediately I hear the little voice in my head saying, different culture, different language. You won't be able to get anything. This is how the brain works after all these years. And I just took a breath and said, I hear you. You're not being helpful. I have done readings for people in India. I've done readings for people in many countries. I share this with all of you now to acknowledge that little voice in your head may never go away. Acknowledge it and set it aside. I said to Valerie, by all means, her son can come and translate. It doesn't matter. We're connecting soul to soul. Before she even came on screen, in my mind's eye, I saw charades of a man going down on one knee, and I knew she had a husband on the other side who was going to come through. And right away, that's what happened. I said, well, you have a husband here. And she was so sweet. She was just quiet, and her son was there. He was very smiley. He didn't seem like, don't try to pull the wool over my mom's eyes. He was very open to all of this. And I described her husband's personality, and she's nodding her head. I don't think her English was as bad as she thought, because he didn't do a whole lot of translating. But once we nailed down the personality, I could really tell we'd anchored in his presence. I asked him silently, what kind of work did you used to do? That's just one of those things that serves to be great evidence. And I said, he's showing me interacting with the public, selling things in a small location, like a merchant. And the son answered, he was a merchant. And I said, well, that's good, great. So we're off and running with the evidence. I got physical symptoms. My heart was palpitating. So his mother was just very pleased throughout this. And I realized I didn't see what kind of merchant he was. The connection was so good, I decided, let's open this up a little wider. And I said to him silently, what did you sell? The reason I'm asking silently is I don't want to ask him out loud and have my clients think the answer to themselves, and I could pick it up from them. That's unethical. So I silently said, what did you sell? He flashed in my mind an image that I described. I said, your husband is showing me he sold something that looks like blankets stacked up. They're white blankets about this big, stacked up in a pile. And his son laughed and he says, he had a newsstand. Those are newspapers. I love it. That's why it's so important to report objectively, mediums, what you sense out there. If I had said, well, he's showing me he sold blankets, and they would have said no. So now we figure it out together. To me, that's just fine. You can see what Dad's trying to get across in the best way he can. Then my favorite point in the whole reading, I said, your husband's showing me, you know, if he were to shave his beard, there would be little hairs on the counter. And he's showing me you, his wife, sweeping them up. And he says, you have them. Well, this sweet, demure little lady suddenly just went like this. She just came alive and she said in English, I asked him to tell you that. Oh, it was a moment. Again, it was so beautiful. Goosebumps galore. And I looked at her son and I said, that's when you know, right there. And it made my whole day. He also said, I never missed a day of work. Word for word, he said it just like that. And the son said he worked 365 days a year. Youch. Okay. He showed me walking hand in hand with his wife, but he showed some current events. And she said, yes, that's correct. But does he know about my son's wedding? Well, as a medium, I know he does. I know all of your loved ones see all that you do. They see all these special occasions and the everyday things. But I have to ask, right? So what are we asking for? Show me something that happened at the wedding. So I tuned in. Okay, Dad, did you see your son's wedding? And what did you see? And I said, well, what I'm getting is that you had your wedding right alongside a body of water and you had live string music. And he got this big smile because it was really pretty recent and it was right along a lake and they had a string quartet. So yay, that was just beautiful. So mediums, don't be afraid to ask, but always be ready to answer the very first thing you get before that little voice, the left brain, kicks in and tries to talk you out of it. Trust the spirit, not your sitter or yourself. And as we wrapped it up, I felt kind of bad. She says, without you, Suzanne, I couldn't have lived the past few years. And her son makes this funny face and he says, yeah, she watches your videos and she talks about you every day. She tells me about the latest video before she even asks how I'm doing. But just cracked me up. So I'm glad we finally fulfilled her wish to get a reading. So please make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel and checking for all these this new content that's coming out. It may not be new to some of you, but hearing it again, hopefully will just keep you engaged on your own spiritual path. So we were going to talk about Wayne Dyer this evening. It's so funny. I was talking about him on a trip to Boulder last week and somebody said, who's that? Wayne Dyer. Oh my gosh. For many of us, he was an icon of spiritual transformation and raising our consciousness. And he passed in 2018, I believe. 2015. No, not that long ago.
I believe it was 2015 because Brenda and I went to the Celebrate Your Life conference and he had just died.
I had given him a reading at my house and we were on a first name basis. And so when he passed, I asked him when he was ready to come through to me because I would love to hear how he was doing. And he did come through with great evidence that I was able to validate with his family that it was really him visiting. And he said, I'm sitting at the feet of the masters. And he had written many books about the masters, several books about some of their favorite quotes and the spiritual lessons from those. And he said, I got it almost all right, which I thought was fun. But he's clearly still helping many of us here. And once we get across the veil, we can multitask and be with several people at once. So he's one of those that you might want to call on for your own teaching and your meditation. But I was really surprised on the cruise in the middle of the night. I got a download from my guides about things they wanted me to share in the next day's workshop on the stage on the cruise ship. And Wayne Dyer dropped in with some things that he wanted me to share. I thought that was so cool. So I want to share with you what he shared then, but it requires a little bit of a backstory. Some of you may have seen this in my Your Emerging Soul online course, but it's so valuable for all of us to understand how we can see ourselves and our story versus our soul, that I'm going to share it again tonight. So I'm going to start with a couple slides. I was introduced to this concept of seeing ourselves as story by an author named Richard Moss, who in his book guided the reader to draw two circles, one inside another, and to put you, meaning all the people in your life, as the word you on the circle. So that would be like your child or your husband or your boss. That's them. That's all the yous in your life. And then you write me on the diagram as well. And this is when I drew a diagram, that's how I wrote that's how I drew my diagram. I was really stunned when I turned to the next chapter in Richard's book, and his diagram looked like that. And I hope you'll understand why I said to myself, what, you mean me isn't at the center? Because don't we all really feel like we're here having the experience of life that's happening around us? We are the center of our own story, the center of our own little universe. It's not an egotistical thing. It's just how most of us picture our relationship with others. So when I saw that in Moss's book, I questioned, so if I'm not in the center, what is in the center? And it's very clear once you realize what Moss was getting at. It's the part of all of us that never changes. The I am, the awareness that I exist, that's God. And it's in all of us. That's spirit. And we all share it. We all arise from it. When we shift in the Bless Me method that I teach, and we surrender our focus on ourselves and our story, we surrender our identification with our story, where do we shift? We shift to a higher dimension. The highest dimension you can go to has no dimension. It's this state of pure being. Everything else is story. So I am living life as a soul and a body. It's my story that I'm living here. You and all these yous on the diagram around you are stories. We are all equally stories, expressions in consciousness of the I am that is beyond the story. So this is the teaching that I had been learning from Richard Moss, and he said in his teaching, what you can read on the screen, I hope there, you can see it, mine is covered up with Zoom things. Moss says you can let the I am be your trusted friend, like the Persian mystic Rumi, when he referred to the I am as the beloved. If any of you have read any of the Persian mystic Rumi's poetry, you will have read him write about the beloved a lot. That's Rumi's name for the ultimate, for source, for God, the beloved. I love that. And I didn't realize that when I first started reading his poetry. Many of you will know, because I quote it often, my favorite poem by Rumi is, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. That to me is the recipe for peace, everybody, in your life. To realize, looking at the diagram now, that you and me have our ideas of what is right and what is wrong. But there is one field of consciousness, one ultimate seed that we all share, where there is no idea of right doing or wrong doing. There is pure connection, simply the awareness, I exist. When we can set the story aside and rest as the beloved with no story, that is peace. That is why I call it joy. There's no story at all to knock us off balance. So Richard Moss in his book says, watch out. When you come to know who you are beyond the story, the ego doesn't like that. And it says, you annihilate ego by taking it out of the center. Remember, like, what do you mean I'm not the center of my universe? I belong to something more that everybody else belongs to. The ego will push back and give you lessons about that. Well, right around the time that I was learning all of this, my husband went backpacking one night. So I was alone in bed, woke up at 3 a.m. in a full-fledged panic attack. I rarely get them. I remembered having a few when I was in my early 20s. But, oh, you feel like you're dying. You're going down this black tunnel. Your heart's palpitating. Fear, fear, fear. And I just knew at that time to ask my guides, what do I do? And they said, just look at it. And I said, look at it. Well, I looked at the fear with curiosity. That caused me to step back and not be caught up in the story. I had stepped to observer status, and it just flowed right through me. The fear disappeared as soon as I looked at it and didn't try to run from it. And then the guide said, look up the word annihilate. Remember, Moss had said you annihilate the ego by taking it out of the center. Well, I looked it up, and it comes from the Latin words annihilatus, brought to nothing. I had thought that annihilate means to kill. You kill the ego. But when you take yourself out of the center of that diagram, when you realize you are part of this greater reality, so much more than this temporary story, no matter how painful it may appear to you at times, or how beautiful, all you do is show that the ego, the story of you, is really no solid thing. It's no permanent thing. You're bringing the ego to no thing. You're realizing the story is still here, but there's so much more. There's eternity here in being an emanation of the beloved. We're not killing the ego by recognizing we're part of something more. We're simply acknowledging we are part of a whole, and the story is just an aspect of that. So I share this now because that very night when I was told to look up annihilate, in drops Wayne Dyer unexpectedly. I'd already connected with him after he passed, but he's here now visiting me in the middle of the night. And he said, go to my last book that I wrote. I said, okay, I have to go online and pull up my iPad. It's 3 a.m. And I look at Amazon, what's his last book? And it was called I Can See Clearly Now. And he said, go to the last chapter in I Can See Clearly Now. So I can't remember if I had to buy it or I already had it, but I downloaded, I get it on my Kindle reader. I go to the last chapter. Wayne's in my awareness saying, go to the last page. Okay, I turned to the last page of the book he's guided me to just after having this experience about annihilating the ego and Rumi's poem and the beloved. And his book ends with a poem by Rumi. The very last page of his book, a poem by Rumi that said, love has come and it is like blood in my veins. It has annihilated me and filled me with the beloved. Can you see why he's a master teacher? Can you feel the miracle in that moment? Can you feel how it's all God orchestrating these moments to show us the connection? We have Richard Moss. We have something I've taught in the past. We have Wayne Dyer. We have Rumi. We have talk of a beloved, this word annihilate. And it all comes together in this lesson for all of us. Love is the lack of separation. Love is God, total connection. What Wayne realized at the end of his life when he wrote that book was, love is all there is. And it is like the blood in my veins. It's the life force that flows through your body. It's what animates and breathes you now. And for Wayne and for Rumi, it had annihilated the me. the sense of needing a story as our self-identification. The story will be here as long as you want, even after you die. That's what a medium connects with, the story of the soul. But it has annihilated me, the story, and filled me with the beloved, the awareness, I am this. What a beautiful lesson. That's all the backstory. And yet that is timeless teaching that we could all be reminded of day after day. That's the whole point. The challenge every human faces when they suffer, the cause of all wars and conflict, is the false perception that we are separate. It is the false idea that you are not God in expression. When we can have the courage to say, it's all God, despite what religions have been teaching, there's peace. There is the end to wars. But we're not there yet. And that's why teachers like Wayne Dyer are dropping in on us. And that's why you're here attending things like this. So you can really own that and radiate that to the world. So Wayne dropped in on me in the middle of the night in the cruise, and he gave me some new teaching. He said, talk about the second verse of Rumi's poem, Out Beyond Ideas of Right Doing and Wrong Doing. I wrote it down in the middle of the night. I get backstage the next day, and Wayne drops in on me backstage. And he says, hey, your producer for this cruise, her name is Ibis, like the ibis bird, but pronounced the Spanish way, Ibis. He says to me, as I'm waiting to go on stage, I gave Ibis a necklace once. She loves it. See, Life Journeys produces these cruises that I'm now doing, and Ibis is the producer. And I knew that she had produced some cruises with Wayne. She was ready to produce one when he died, and all these people had signed up for the cruise, but we really hadn't talked about it. So Ibis comes backstage like, you ready to go on now, Suzanne? And I said, I'm ready, but Wayne Dyer is here. You can imagine how she looked at me. And I said, he tells me he gave you a necklace and you love it. I'll tell you all, she dropped an F-bomb on me right then and there. She was so stunned. And I said, yeah, he's right here, right now. And then he proceeded to have a little conversation with her through me. Minutes before I go on stage, I said, he wants me to change up what I was going to share today. We have to share a new lesson. So here we go. And I stepped out on the stage and went through what I was going to share. And then the rest of it, I'm sharing with all of you now. Let me share with you that second verse. Out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. Now, the field is an analogy for a field of grass, right? But it's also, when you understand consciousness, the field of infinite intelligence from which we all arise. So that Rumi, he got it right before quantum physics became known. I will meet you there. So just become pure consciousness and there's peace. The second verse is, when the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other make no sense. That is so profound. Let's go through that a little bit here. When the soul lies down in that grass, the field, meaning when you as a soul set aside your focus on the objective world and rest as pure being in the field of consciousness, when you set the story aside and dissolve into that peace that's right here between all the words and the ideas that are constantly bubbling up in your story, the world is too full to talk about, because all there is now is pure potential of what's going to arise next. You arise right now, moment by moment, from a field of pure potential. That's why you're here as a creator, a co-creator with Source. to create something more beautiful than you came here with. That's why you're here, to love fiercely. But we lie down in that field to be inspired from the very field from which we can't be separated. And when we dissolve into that field, the concept of an idea makes no sense. Language makes no sense because there's just being without a story. The concept of each other makes no sense because we've all dissolved into pure being. There's no need to fear annihilating the self. The self will constantly arise from that field. But in between arising, this state of being is the ultimate peace, the ultimate joy. You can come to experience that just by pausing for moments, 3 minutes in the sip of the divine, sitting in peace and noticing the spaces in between. You come to realize it really is a constant bubbling up of ideas and language and images from a source, a wellspring that never stops. But you also experience that wellspring, and it is you. Wow. So Wayne's teaching was, don't lie down in that field, sit up. I got it when he said it. It's what we're all seeking on this spiritual path, to integrate what the soul already knows. I am this pure consciousness. And by integrating, I mean bring this awareness. I am here to be the light of consciousness. I am here to be God in expression. Bringing that into the story of you and appreciating your story for what it is, a vehicle to express source through your life. So if you were to dissolve by lying down in that field, there's nothing to express because there's no language or ideas. There's this pure being. But if you were fully standing up in the field, now you might have lost awareness of your source. But if you just sit up in this field, now you're aware of being in the field, partially dissolved maybe, and also in this world, but not of it. I got this concept so deeply, what he was saying, and I expressed it on the ship, but I didn't have time to really get the nuances. But after I got back, I reached out to my dear friend, Karen Crawford, and I said, Karen, here's the concept. This is what I see. Will you please draw this for me? So you all are the first to see this fantastic drawing that Karen, we always go back and forth, and I go, no, do this a little, do that a little. She has done a superb job. Look at this, everybody. Here are two beings, and she says it's actually Wayne Dyer and me, which is kind of cute. But two beings sitting down in the field. The field is another name for the sea of consciousness. You can see it looks like just this energy information beneath us, and our legs and our feet are dissolving into this field of being, of infinite intelligence. But above us is the physical manifest world, which is really not so solid if you look at it scientifically. I love how she put butterflies in there. And Wayne's touching his heart. We're reaching out to each other. But what does Rumi say again? When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other make no sense. So look at that signpost there. Each other is even dissolving into the field. I know at a soul level, this is making sense to most of you. For some of you, it's kind of, you're just trying to wrap your heads around it. But let me make it practical. When Valerie said, you're going to do a reading with a woman who speaks Gujarati and her son needs to translate, my immediate reaction was, as I said, how can I do that? It's a different culture. That's the part of me that was in the physical world, manifest in a body, in a vehicle that's programmed to make us feel separate. I knew from doing this work, from sitting in peace, doing the sip of the divine, from meditating every day and experiencing the field, that the field is right here. It's our essence. It's our source. I knew all I had to do was sit up in that field. All I needed to do was imagine part of my physicality dissolving into the field. That means I am connected to everything. It's all right here, and it's all here for you all the time. This is a metaphor. These are analogies and pictures to help you grok this. You don't have to do anything to dissolve into that field. You are already both the field and the body. You are already whole. You are all of this, but standing up in the field and walking around as an apparent separate being keeps us feeling separate, causes us to think, I can't do that. I can't connect with somebody who speaks Gujarati. I can't connect with my husband. I have to try harder. When all you really need to do is sit up in that field and experience that field that you're always intimately connected with, flowing through you, through you. And then because you're sitting up, you'll be able to use ideas and language to amplify the story. There's nothing wrong with the story. It's why we're here. It's how we bring the field into expression. I love working with spirit to make this easy for all of us to understand, because it is the greatest teaching and understanding you can come to in this life. If you want peace, rewind and listen to that again, okay? But there are many, many ways to say it. That's just the latest. And I thank Wayne Dyer, and I thank Rumi, and I thank my spirits. And I thank my husband for letting me write notes in the middle of the night without saying, what are you doing? Go back to sleep. And I hope that that really sat with all of you.